some rather shocking news. The U.S. is deploying an entirely new type of weapon in military operations. It turns out that the Iranians, no matter how much they want to, can't open the Hormuz Strait. Yes, it sounds strange, doesn't it? And what about the fact that to open the strait, they need help from the U.S.? Life is even stranger than any movie, as they say. Movie. I promise to tell you soon about the new weapon and about Iran's problem. In the last 10 years, thousands of Iranian military, political, and religious leaders have sent their children to live in the U.S., to the dwelling place of what they call Satan. Yes, little Satan is Israel, big Satan is the United States. So they sent their children straight into the lair of Satan. Where did they take pictures of their child? They immediately started drinking alcoholic beverages and posted their photos on Instagram in such a way that even in depraved America, people would be embarrassed, blush, and turn away when they saw it. How does it happen that the sons of Ukrainian patriots who say not an inch of land and fight to the last, instead of being at the front, work, study, and live in Washington, Miami, and New York, or at worst in London? And they even live in neighboring houses, with the daughters of Iranian mullahs walking around in bikinis. It sounds absolutely terrible. At the same time, some fathers send 25,000 other people's children to their deaths every month, while other fathers execute other daughters for skirts that are too short or a strand of hair showing from under a headscarf. We'll talk about this a bit later, too. But let's start with what goes on behind the political scenes, in which, despite many obstacles, a 2-week truce was prepared. Well, let's say made and prepared. And who is the person who can order both the military and religious leaders in Iran to stop their actions? Let's listen to a report from the neutral country of India. It reports on 43 hours of tense negotiations between Trump and Chemto, who, according to Trump, stands by his words. So Radhika Thavat.
That was the very moment when the world was on the brink of a major escalation, and literally in 15 minutes, everything changed. Hello, I'm Radhika Kadaha, and you're watching The Big Picture with me. For almost 43 hours, the United States and Iran were dangerously close to a full-scale military strike. Military plans were ready, targets were set, and warnings about the destruction of civilization had already been voiced by Donald Trump. But behind the scenes, quiet and complex diplomatic efforts were unfolding, which ultimately led to a sudden ceasefire. So how did this dramatic turn of events happen?
How did this shift from plans to destroy humanitarian facilities to stopping the military machine happen? What or who influenced this?
The story begins in the midst of an escalating conflict after weeks of American and Israeli strikes on Iran, which began on February 28 of this year. Tensions reached a critical point, and by early April, both sides were preparing for something much bigger. On one side, the Pentagon was reportedly finalizing plans for large-scale escalatory attacks against Iran's infrastructure. On the other side, Iran was preparing for retaliatory actions that, as regional countries feared, could spiral out of control. Meanwhile, the civilian population inside Iran had already begun moving away from potential targets. And this is where events take an unexpected turn. And even as public threats intensified, behind-the-scenes diplomacy quietly began. During the Easter event at the White House, Trump received what officials called the first positive signal from Iran. They called it the first signal from Iran.
Despite the threat of destruction to oil and energy infrastructure in the Gulf countries, the leadership of Saudi Arabia, Kuwait, Oman, the Emirates, and Bahrain is persuading, almost begging, I would say, because there's a fine line between persuading and begging, Trump not to leave the region until the government in Iran changes. Naturally, this is exactly what the Iranian government does not want. What's the point of fighting and dying? Or to destroy the surrounding countries? Run where? Run and hide in Russia, maybe? Or in China, together with Assad, being neighbors on the same platform? There's no point at all. That's why, so to speak, they're not rushing and they're not fighting. They want to do everything they can to appear fearless, but they want to negotiate. Well, a letter came directly to Trump, or rather a short message. Listen to this.
Now, this message did not come directly from the top leadership of Iran, but through intermediaries connected to Mojtaba Khamenei, the influential son of Iran's supreme leader, Ali Khamenei.
That is, the message came from the chosen leader of Iran, Ayatollah Mojtaba Khamenei, the son of the American-killed Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, Iran.
From that moment on, the next 43 hours turned into a non-stop diplomatic race. Phone calls were made to all the capitals. Messages were delivered, reviewed, and sent again. And most importantly, several countries acted as mediators. Pakistan, Turkey, and Egypt played a key role in overcoming the disagreements. Leaders like Pakistani Shahbaz Sharif were actively involved in pushing both sides toward a ceasefire. Meanwhile, diplomatic channels connected groups of United States envoys with Iran's Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi. But communication with Iran's top leadership remained extremely difficult. And according to reports, responses related to Iran's supreme leader were not delivered directly, but indirectly, sometimes even through written notes instead of personal conversations.
The fact that negotiations are taking place with representatives of the actual leadership is confirmed by the fact that there has been no shooting in Hormuz for 4 days now. This does not mean that everything is fine, that everything is going smoothly, because, first of all, the sides do not trust each other, and secondly, they are really trying to test each other. But it does mean that the IRGC is obeying the person behind the negotiations. In addition, China has made its contribution. Xi Jinping called yesterday, I think, or the day before, for Iran to de-escalate the situation.
And at the same time, another global player stepped onto the stage. It is reported that China advised Iran to consider the possibility of de-escalation, a new way to reduce tensions without appearing weak. But the final decision still remained with the leadership in Tehran.
So, on the one hand, Ayatollah and his circle could not allow the U.S. and the world to become so angry that they would make it their goal to destroy the regime. On the other hand, they cannot exist without oil revenues. Thirdly, China is pushing to prevent collapse and catastrophe in the oil and gas sector because China absolutely does not need that. With a different U.S. president, Iran could hope that the threats would never be carried out. But Trump? He decided to convince the whole world that he is unbalanced, desperate, reckless, and the complete opposite of a normal politician. That means he's dangerous, and he wrote a unique text, unlike anything else. Well, on Truth Social, which I think will go down in the history of diplomacy, like so much of what happened during this war and in the lead-up to it. An entire civilization will die tonight, never to be reborn again. That's quite a statement, right? A civilization will die. I don't want that to happen. But that's probably how it will be. However, now that we've achieved a complete and final regime change, he means that everyone who was in charge was killed and others took their place. Actually, they're subordinates. It's already the third level of subordination, so technically it's not a regime change, but everyone who previously represented the regime has been killed. They're already in the afterlife, so a regime change has occurred. Now, there are different, smarter, and less radical minds in the leadership of Iran. Maybe something revolutionary and wonderful will happen. Who knows? We'll find out about it today. Before that, Trump wrote, Tuesday will be the day of power plants and the day of bridges. All in one. There has never been anything like this in Iran. Open it. Next is a profane statement. Straight you. Profanity again, or you will live in hell. And then he really shocked the mullahs by writing, Praise be to Allah. So, what do you think the Iranians decided? Most likely that Trump is an unstable psycho who could disregard everything and start doing what they thought he would never do, namely burn his chances of winning the elections in November. That is, Trump convinced them, and the U.S. Democrats as well, that he is uncontrollable. By the way, the Democrats immediately started demanding a psychiatric evaluation, and they started shouting that, yes, he's crazy, he'll strike Iran with a nuclear bomb, he'll destroy civilization, he's lost his mind. Which only convinced the Iranians even more that they needed to act quickly, at the very least to cool Trump down, and they offered a 2-week truce.
The idea was simple, but it was crucial: to stop the fighting, open the Hormuz Strait, and create the conditions for a long-term deal. But even in this case, nothing was guaranteed. In Washington, Trump was under enormous pressure from his allies, who were strongly opposed to any kind of deal. Some of them were strongly urging him to continue the military actions. Even within his own circle, it wasn't clear what he would decide. At the same time, Israel, led by Benjamin Netanyahu, was closely monitoring the situation. Israeli officials were reportedly concerned that decisions were being made without their control. Then came the final stage. Pakistan publicly presented an updated framework agreement for a ceasefire and strongly urged both sides to accept it.
After that, we know what happened. Since Saturday, the two delegations in Islamabad were supposed to sit in separate rooms. A mediator from Pakistan moves between them, but along the way it was decided that this would complicate the negotiation process, so the meeting will be live, face-to-face. From Iran, Prime Minister Shahbaz Sharif and Foreign Minister Ishaq Dar. If I'm pronouncing his name correctly, it's very similar to Itzhak, but a little different. Ishaq, I think. What does Iran want? In short, they want peace in exchange for dignity. They cannot surrender. They need a formula where they don't look like losers in front of their own people. But at the same time, they will get security and money. Basically, they want to have their cake and eat it too. They understand that control over Hormuz, that is the Hormuz Strait, is their trump card, their leverage. For many years, Iranian military forces have been conducting war games, simulating a response to the U.S. and Israel, and they were developing plans to close the strait, as well as bunkers in the mountains under 200 to 300 meters of basalt. Bombers, so to speak, and bombing of all neighboring countries. At the beginning of 1926, they had approximately 2,000 ballistic missiles, give or take, and by the time of the U.S. and Israel attack in March, there were already about 3,000, both their own and Chinese ones. They plan to bring this number up to 10,000, while at the same time, that means getting 90% enriched uranium. They were going to do this by the end of this very year and strike Israel. And if the U.S. intervenes, then also strike American bases in the region and use, well, I don't know, maybe dirty bombs, I think. Maybe use their enriched uranium in some other way. But the Iranians didn't know about this new weapon. It's called the bunker penetrator. That is, so to speak, a new bomb, which no one else even comes close to having. It's so heavy and unguided that only the B-2 can carry it. It weighs 30 tons. And so America has a fundamentally new weapon that was developed together with Israel. The U.S. and Israel. I'll tell you about it a little later. If you haven't subscribed, gentlemen, you won't receive notifications. And if you subscribe but forgot to click the bell, the algorithm will think you're interested in the channel, but not very, very much. So that means subscribe, then click the bell. Don't forget. Also, those who want to get more in-depth analysis, subscribe to the paid section of the channel. It's $4 a month. We'll accept more if someone wants to give, but the minimum is $4 a month. But let's get back to Iran and the miracle weapon, which the U.S. and Israel have developed, that other NATO members don't have. And if things keep going the way they are between them and us now, then they won't get it either. That's it. We're with the socialists, I'm just kidding. Globalists, fascists, and thieves, even if they're acting within the law. I mean, they hold high positions. We don't really want to deal with them, let alone defend them. We definitely don't intend to defend British anti-Semites and fascists from Russian bandits and fascists. Let them fight each other as much as they want. But why did we strike now? I mean against Iran. And what kind of miracle weapon do we have?
But here's what people don't fully take into account. Iran has a plan. They've had this plan for 20 years. The Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, IRGC, has rehearsed the scenario of a US or Israeli strike thousands of times. They know that it will happen someday. They've built their entire regional strategy around making such a strike unbearably costly. The doctrine is called multi-domain retaliation. If you attack us, we'll strike everywhere at once using all our proxies and available methods. Hezbollah, Hamas, the Houthis in Yemen, Shiite militias in Iraq, rocket batteries in Syria, sleeper cells in Europe and South America. Iran's missile arsenal alone is the largest in the Middle East. They have more than 3,000 ballistic missiles, precision-guided munitions that they have been perfecting for decades, hypersonic-related systems that their engineers have developed through reverse engineering of Russian and Chinese models. And then there's the Strait of Hormuz, 20 years of the world's oil supply passes through this strait every day. One of the first actions Iran would take in a serious military conflict, as confirmed by all exercises, is to mine the Strait of Hormuz and deploy anti-ship batteries along the coast. Block the Strait of Hormuz for 2 weeks and oil will be $200 per barrel. Block it for a month and it will be a global economic shock that will make 2008 look insignificant. This isn't speculation, it's mathematics. To be continued. And Tehran knows that oil is a weapon that hits everyone. Europe, Asia, the US economy, all at the same time. So why is Trump doing this and why right now? Because 3 things happened at once. First, Netanyahu arrived in Washington with specific intelligence data that reportedly showed Iran's nuclear program had crossed a threshold that Israeli analysts consider irreversible. Not a bomb, but the raw material and the technical capability to assemble it faster than anyone could stop it. Secondly, Trump is entering the most critical phase of his second term with a domestic audience that expects him to show strength. After many years of what his electorate calls weakness, Afghanistan, chaotic years of strategic drift, Trump is positioning himself as a president who does what others were afraid to do. Third, China. Here's an aspect that almost no one is covering properly. China is quietly expanding its economic relations with Iran. Chinese refineries are buying Iranian oil in violation of sanctions with such intensity that it has prevented the complete collapse of Iran's economy under American pressure. Iran and China have a 25-year strategic cooperation agreement that was signed in 2021. If Iran acquires nuclear weapons, it will forever change China's position in the Middle East. And Trump, no matter what you think of him, sees the Middle East not only through the lens of Israel or Iran, but through the perspective of who will win the long game for global dominance. A nuclear Iran is a gift to Beijing. So when Trump talks about military options, he's not just talking about Netanyahu's problem, he's talking about his own. Let's get to the point.
All American presidents said, we still have time. But when Trump 47 took office, it turned out there was no time left. And now about the deadly weapon of the 22nd century.
The U.S. has never before used such a combination of capabilities in real operations. Let's start with the B-21 Raider. This is the newest American stealth bomber. It has just reached initial operational capability. It's smaller than the B-2, cheaper to operate, and has an open architecture that allows for faster weapons upgrades than any other platform. Is the B-21 already deployed in the theater of operations? The Air Force won't confirm it, but defense analysts who are following this don't rule out the possibility. Then there's what's happening in electronic warfare. Before any kinetic strike, the U.S. would launch a multi-layered electronic attack on Iran's air defense. EA-18G Growler aircraft carrying out jamming missions, cyber operations targeting radar networks, electronic intelligence planes tracking every Iranian air defense battery in real time. Iran's air defense system is built on the Russian-supplied S-300 systems. They are formidable but have known vulnerabilities when faced with a coordinated multi-vector electronic attack. The Israelis, by the way, have already tested some of this themselves. In April 2024, Israel carried out a direct strike on Iranian territory for the first time in history, using a combination of unmanned aerial vehicles and missiles. The strike was limited and symbolic, but it revealed something extremely important. The Iranian air defense intercepted some of what was coming at them, but not everything. The Israelis broke through, and what the United States is bringing is not just Israeli capabilities, it's several orders of magnitude higher. But here's what really changes everything: autonomous systems. The American military's program for collaborative combat aircraft produces AI-powered unmanned wingmen that fly alongside manned aircraft and expand their capabilities. They can be deployed into dangerous environments, which would be suicidal for a manned aircraft.
Autonomous platforms fly alongside the aircraft. Not with a pilot, but with AI. Artificial intelligence. They react faster, more powerfully, and without fear of being shot down. And they have dual control. Someone can control them from the center, or they can be switched to autonomous mode. Flying platforms can go anywhere, even under heavy fire, and they transmit information about scouted locations, tunnels, positions, bunkers, warehouses. And if necessary, they call in new stealth planes with bombs capable of penetrating 200 meters of granite.
Somewhere over the Persian Gulf at somewhere high above the Persian Gulf at an altitude of 65,000 feet, a certain aircraft, which theoretically shouldn't exist in this war, cuts through the darkness of the night. There is a significant intentional gap between what is actually happening and what is reported to the general public. This is not a conspiracy. That's just how military operations work. Operational security is a reality. You can't announce a strike in advance. You don't confirm your capabilities. You don't let the enemy know what you know. But this means that everything you see in public reports, in Pentagon statements, official Israeli briefings, IAEA reports, is just a carefully selected fragment. There are aspects of the US deployment that haven't been photographed. Systems transferred to the theater of operations through channels invisible to commercial satellite imagery. Communication between Trump and Netanyahu that hasn't been leaked. There are secret negotiations with Iran being mediated by the United States, and no one in the American press is covering them in detail. There are assessments from Israeli intelligence regarding Iran's readiness, which have changed the timeline calculations in a way that hasn't been reflected in any public statements. And somewhere in a secret appendix to a document that very few people have read, there is a strike plan. It's detailed, worked out in war games. Updated in the last 30 days with targets, sequence of actions, expected losses, the anticipated vectors of Iranian retaliation, and a chain of political approval that leads to the President of the United States. It exists. Whether it will be implemented is still a question. But the fact that it exists, that it is relevant, that it is provided with the necessary resources, that the machinery for its execution is in place, this is not speculation. This is exactly what the deployment indicates.
A detail has just come to light that is rather hard to believe. Iran has scattered mines across the strait, but in their haste. They made maps, apparently, yes, but since the Americans immediately sank all those mine-laying ships, they didn't have time to send the minefield map to headquarters. And besides, their mines, well, let's just say they're not exactly good, and they drift. And they could end up, well, far away or close to the places where they were left. The Iranians who know how to lay them, they don't know how to find and collect them. I mean, they have nothing to find and collect them with. Nice little yellow ones, right?
And Robert, and something else the president...
And Robert, the president, told me something else. I asked him about the intelligence indicating that Iran doesn't know where all the mines are now. Because they say that's why they can't reopen the Strait of Hormuz, because of the mines they've placed there. And of course, the damage this could cause to passing tankers. The president says he doesn't know about this intelligence, but he says, we know where they are located and that we are delivering some complex mine equipment to that place. Have you heard about this in Iran not knowing the mine locations?
Well, this is a concern expressed by many Gulf states and one that we've heard here in the region regarding what kind of threats exist in the Strait of Hormuz and how accessible it will be in the near future. I would say that there have even been recent comments from the president, which appeared just a couple of minutes ago, saying that they believe they have weakened Iran's capabilities to prevent it from worsening the situation in the Strait of Hormuz.
So it seems that the Iranians no longer have ships that could conduct mine-sweeping operations. They don't know now, after the destruction of the mine layers, how many mines they laid and exactly where. And even if they wanted to, they can't remove them from there. They pretend that they don't want to, but in reality, they simply can't. By the way, it's interesting in this context to listen to Russian propagandists who are pro-Iranian, saying things like, "Our Iran, our brothers there," and so on. stuff like that. They say he's famous, but honestly, I don't know him.
American drones don't fly as freely over Iran's skies, even though Trump was boasting that Iran's air defense was completely destroyed. And Trump had the nerve to say that we destroyed, he says, the Iranian Navy, 100 ships that, as they say, were doomed to destruction anyway, since, of course, they couldn't compete with the American armadas. И Трамп врет, что уничтожили Iranian Air Force. That's a lie. Why? Because in January of this year, the Iranians received about 50 Su-35s from Russia. And there's even a video where these Su-35s were flying over Tehran before the war started. We haven't heard anything about any of these super modern Russian planes being destroyed, which Iranian pilots have generally mastered. So we can assume that there will come a moment when the U.S. air defense system will weaken. Israel is in the region, and Iranian Su-35S will take to the skies.
And after that, let's listen to this message.
And we have major news is
And we have very important news. United States Navy ships have urgently entered the Strait of Hormuz amid ongoing negotiations between Iran and the United States in Pakistan, as well as continued bombings in Lebanon, which could become a huge reason for these negotiations to break down. So this is a major event since the ceasefire was announced on Tuesday evening by President Donald Trump. And now there's breaking news from Barack Ravid of Axios, who reported that several United States Navy ships crossed the Strait of Hormuz this Saturday, that is today, April 11. A U.S. official stated that this move was not coordinated with Iran. This is the first time this has happened since the start of the war. And the fact that it was not coordinated with Iran will be critically important. Stay with us so you don't miss anything. Next, we will show you footage of the U.S. Navy destroyer Michael Murphy, which is currently passing through the Strait of Hormuz. So this strait is right here. You can see Keshim Island, the city of Bandar Abbas, and right there, the American warship, the destroyer USS Michael Murphy, is currently moving up the strait, dangerously, even shockingly close to Iranian territory, and then passes through the Strait of Hormuz. This is a very significant move. So reportedly, the Iranians have warned that they will sink, that they will attack these ships if they do not leave the waters within 30 minutes. However, from the moment of that warning to the time I'm recording this, the full 30 minutes have already passed. They still haven't opened fire on these ships with anti-ship missiles. Why haven't they fired on these ships yet? Probably because they know that if they bomb these US Navy ships, the war will resume. And it will be much more brutal than ever before. But they've already made a threat. They've warned that if the US Navy ships don't leave the Hormuz Strait, they'll be sunk. But again, I want to emphasize the 30-minute deadline has long since passed. And at the moment I'm recording this, these ships have not been, I repeat, have not been bombed, but Iran is certainly continuing to threaten.
Funny, right, yeah? A Russian analyst from Russia, maybe he's not ethnically Russian, I don't know, maybe he's Bashkir. And he says Iran is hiding its planes. By the way, why is it hiding its planes? Why didn't those planes fight back against the American aircraft? And when will the U.S. air defense, the U.S. and Israeli air defense, weaken? When will they weaken? Those planes will appear. Well, Russian means excellent, excellent in the sense of different from good, and they will defeat everyone. And at the same time, American ships enter the Hormuz Strait. So 2 military ships just entered the Hormuz Strait, right? They are being threatened. So they even sent drones against them. But it's unclear about the drones. Either they crashed on their own, or they were shot down, or they were turned back. Basically, they sent the drones, and then the ships kept moving forward. And why were they sent there? It's very simple. They're searching for and retrieving those very mines that the Iranians don't know the location of. There you go. Yes, here's another Russian voice, but now coming from the U.S.
Well, Trump is used to doing things that way. It's a cult, after all, so he has to tell them everything while they stay silent and stand at attention. Maybe the cult is starting to fall apart because the leader is beginning to attack those they never thought he would attack. Because the magicians told them it would be Kamala Harris who would start a war, who would send them to war, not the great peacemaker Trump. It turned out that Trump was a peacemaker in 2025, And in 2026, he is already ready to build arches to celebrate his military victories, which he didn't have in 2025. And in 2026, that means he'll need Ukraine and Iran and who else? Cuba and Venezuela. The arch is big. There will be enough space for everyone.
J.D. Vance has to save everyone, and he's such a negotiator for us. He's a creator. Trump says J.D. is there, Steve is there, Jared is there, everyone is there. It's in Islamabad. Negotiations are taking place there today.
You know, it will be hard to reach an agreement because, well, we fundamentally know that on one hand, Trump makes the decisions, and then there's someone like Jared Kushner or J.D. Vance. And on the other hand, J.D., yes, on the other hand, they were given the message to go to the talks and probably agree to everything Iran says.
Yes.
That's all. Well, why would they be against it? They want to end the war. After all, we shot here, we fired a bit, but you guys are playing unfairly in Iran. You blocked the Hormuz Strait. We thought you'd never dare to do that, but you did. And now we're stuck. Oh.
Tell me, does what they're saying fit in any way? Does it correspond to the reality that objectively exists? But if you live in a world you've created yourself, calling it, say, an alternative reality, then yes, the US and Israel didn't destroy the air defense, didn't wipe out the air and naval fleets, didn't eliminate everyone who was leading Iran. Yes, on the contrary, right now, they didn't expect at all that Iran would block the Strait of Hormuz. They just didn't expect it at all. Yes, they're running to save their own skins or something else, but then I have the next question. Because just now, this very Rashkin, he said that Trump is going to build an arch of glory and victory. Well, a Roman one, a Roman one. Yeah, I don't know if he'll ride in on horseback in a tank or something else. So, for what reason is he going to build this frame of victory? I mean, this frame, the Arch of Victory. To celebrate victories in Iran, Cuba, Venezuela, and Ukraine. As Rashkin told us, this announcer, the speaker forgot to mention Armenia and Azerbaijan, Thailand and Cambodia, India and Pakistan, the Abraham Accords, and everything else. By the way, if a person has done so much, I'm ready to pay my share of the arch, if Trump wants it. Honestly, I think that in Rashkin's wet dreams, something is happening that has nothing to do with our reality. But the most interesting thing is that not only him, but also the Ukrainian hosts are full of hatred toward the person who holds their fate in his hands. That is, they hate Trump with the greatest hatred because Trump could help them get rid of the Russians. Oh, that's great, right? And their lives are on the line, yet they keep hating Trump, whether it's despite this or because of it, I don't even know anymore. After all, I'm not a psychotherapist. Right, yeah? And not even a psychiatrist. And Rashkin, of course, is a provocateur, and their lives are on the line. That's what it means when emotion shuts off the brain. I'm talking about Ukrainian announcers and commentators. Although, by saying that, I kind of admitted that they have a brain. Which I'm not entirely sure about. Here's another box. You can see it. Here it is. They talk to them. Maybe they eat too. They have ears. They listen to Rashkin. But I'm not so sure they have a brain. As promised, here's the continuation.
And right now, in particular, Qasem Soleimani's relative, that is the very person mentioned in this statement, she led a wasteful and luxurious lifestyle in Los Angeles. And she didn't follow any, modesty laws that the Islamic Republic forces women to obey inside their country at all. And it was just blatant, outrageous hypocrisy. The Iranian diaspora in particular is definitely celebrating this.
While Iranians face brutal repression at home, the regime's top elites are enjoying a luxurious life right here in the U.S., and the Trump administration is now taking action. Our White House correspondent, Aisha Hassan, is reporting live on this from Washington for us. Hello, Aisha.
Aisha. Hi, Sandra. It's outrageous. In Iran, women are whipped, beaten, doused with acid, even killed for showing their hair. Meanwhile, the relatives of influential Iranian figures here in the U.S. are behaving like the Kardashians. Yesterday, we told you about the niece and grandniece of the slain General Qasem Soleimani, who flaunt their luxurious lives here on American soil. Their visas are now being revoked. And now we are learning about other relatives of high-ranking Iranian leaders who are teaching American students here in our homeland. According to the New York Post, Isa Hashemi, Isa, like Jesus, the Arabic name for Jesus, is the son of the influential Iranian figure Masoumeh Ebtekar. He lives in Los Angeles and is reportedly teaching there. His mother, known as Screaming Mary, was the spokesperson during the U.S. Embassy hostage crisis. We all remember that very well. Fox contacted him twice but did not receive a response, even though Isa's name is still on the Chicago website. Meanwhile, Layla Hatami, the daughter of the former Iranian president, is a professor at Union College, and the daughter of another Iranian leader was an associate professor at Emory University until she was dismissed. Katie Miller states that the President and Secretary of State Marco Rubio are now considering revoking visas for 34,000 members of the Iranian elite currently in the United States.
3,000 or 4,000 children of Iranian leaders, mullahs, officers, and secret police live in the country of the great Satan. Well, that is, here at home, in the United States, in the very country that their fathers and mothers call to destroy every day. And inside Iran, these very people, their fathers, mothers, and others like them, kill, well, let's say people for a fraction of what they allow themselves to do here and in Europe. That is death for homosexuality. For having hair visible from under a headscarf, death. For wearing a dress that's shorter than the modesty laws allow, well, just to avoid being original, death. Yes, a wonderful country with marvelous laws. Then why are there 4,000 highly paid, high-ranking top officials of Iran who have sent their children to live in America, where they don't wear headscarves at all and their skirts don't even cover their underwear? And the men drink alcohol and sleep with whoever they want, including goats. This is a truly brilliant demonstration of the saying, what is permitted to Zeus and his offspring is not permitted to calves. In other words, a normal life, like it was on the planet Zulia, probably in all countries at all times. Well, maybe except for the Jews. Yes, but they were always different. And now, under capitalism, in a republic, in a democracy in some parts of the world, well, there aren't many, of course, just a few such places where this exists, but it does exist, and we're lucky to live in them. All of us still. Even though things are getting worse here, and in Europe, they say, the decay has gone even further, at least they don't cut off your head or hang you for things that, let's say, you'd have been hanged or beheaded for. That's already progress. Right, yes. They don't throw you in a pit, they don't impale you, they don't cut off your hands, they don't stone you to death if, let's say, someone doesn't like something you did. They would throw stones at him and stone him to death. Things are different here, more civilized. It's upsetting and painful, but it's more civilized. I don't want to go that way. That's why I really want to smash Iran to hell, and it would be great to smash our own and Canadian Democrats along with it, whatever they call themselves. Why Canadian? Because they live way too close to us. Well, besides that, I have a soft spot for the country of Canada. It's time for us to unite, but only after separating everyone who wants socialism, let them live on their own with the sea lions. There. Well, all right, we'll wrap up here, and I think we'll meet again very soon. See you soon. Bye.